Hello everyone, and welcome to Earth Archives. Today, we will take you into a legendary story that transcends life and death, filled with love and music, Orfeo and Euridice. This is a classic opera composed by the German-Austrian composer Christoph Willibald Gluck. It tells the moving legend of the musician Orfeo, who bravely ventures into the underworld to reclaim his beloved wife Euridice. Through his music, we feel the power of love, the pain of loss, and ultimately, forgiveness and redemption. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you can be the first to discover more classic stories of music and drama. At a wedding full of love and hope, sunlight spills over a pristine white tent, golden ribbons fluttering gently in the breeze, and petals falling like fine rain on the red carpet. Laughter from friends and family rises and falls, and the air itself seems to carry a sweet fragrance. The groom Orfeo, a musician with a voice like heaven, wears a perfectly tailored white suit. His eyes are fixed solely on her, Euridice, his beloved, his bride, the other half of his soul, walking step by step toward him. Their hands clasped tightly in a sacred vow, promising to walk through life together. Yet, just as cheers rose and music played, fate abruptly drew the curtain. After the wedding, in the garden, Euridice was bitten by a venomous snake hidden in the grass. In an instant, her face turned pale as paper, and her body went limp. Gasps erupted from the crowd as Orfeo dashed like a wild wind, embracing her growing cold form, calling out to her again and again, only to be met with silence and her final breath. Life quietly slipped away from between her fingers. That night, sorrow took root and blossomed in Orfeo's heart. His music grew mournful. Every note spoke of his longing and regret. He could not accept this sudden loss, nor that what should have been a day full of blessings had become the start of an eternal farewell. At his most desperate moment, a dark yet gentle light appeared from the moonlight. The air froze, not a hallucination, but a spirit from the underworld, Aeson. Aeson wore a robe like smoke yet not smoke, his voice low but not cold. Orfeo, I have heard your lament. Even the rivers of the underworld ripple because of it. Your love and pain for Euridice have moved me. Orfeo dropped to his knees, eyes red and voice trembling. Please let me see her once more, even if only to say goodbye. Aeson was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. I will allow you to enter the underworld and bring her back to the living world. But this path cannot be traveled by song alone. You must descend alone. Once you find her, the two of you may return together. However, there is one condition. No matter how much you want to confirm that she is behind you, no matter how much you doubt whether she is still following you out of the dark realm, you must not look back at her until you both have stepped beyond the gates of the underworld. Orfeo accepted this nearly impossible challenge without hesitation and set off on the journey to the underworld. His heart was filled with hope, and his music guided him across the shadowed river of souls, through the deep forest of forgetfulness, and to the silent gates of the underworld. He firmly believed that as long as there was love in his heart, he could reach the darkest end and reclaim his lost wife. Along the way, Orfeo's music not only moved the guardians of the underworld, but also struck awe into death itself. With mournful melodies, he made sleeping spirits weep and the cold darkness tremble. Finally, he found Euridice's soul. She stood quietly deep within the underworld, her eyes still filled with longing for the mortal world and trust in Orfeo. He did not embrace her nor speak, only nodded gently and turned to walk toward the exit. She followed behind him, separated by only a single step, yet divided by the boundary between life and death. The journey back was a cruel test of Orfeo's will. Could he hear her footsteps? Was she still there? Or had the underworld already claimed her? Each step felt like walking a tightrope, fear and love weaving a taut web that strained his sanity. Just as he was about to step out of the underworld and sunlight nearly touched his feet, Orfeo's resolve shattered. His heart overwhelmed his reason. His anxiety and longing conquered his logic. He turned around desperate to confirm if she was still there, if she was safe. And that single glance became their final farewell. Euridice's soul instantly turned to light smoke and vanished into the air. Her outstretched hand never reached his fingertips before it broke apart like a fragile dream. Orfeo let out a heartrending cry. He could no longer bear this second loss, losing his beloved and his trust in himself. Back in the living world, Orfeo refused to eat and sang no more. His soul had already frozen in the underworld, and his remaining body withered away in sorrow. In the end, he chose to perish with his music and his love, wandering into the wilderness and dying of grief. The underworld welcomed the devoted musician once again, but this time, Aeson did not immediately bar his way. The deity stood silently in the depths of the shadowy realm, watching over Orfeo's soul. He witnessed Orfeo's persistence and the limits of his love, understanding that this was not betrayal, but the most genuine and tender human emotional response, a deep longing for the one beloved. Your song can awaken a sleeping world, and your love makes even death tremble. Aeson spoke slowly. Though you erred, your sincerity remains. Thus, Aeson made an unprecedented decision to allow Euridice to return to the living world. The two souls, deeply in love, were finally reunited, no longer separated by the barrier between the underworld and the living, no longer punished by the rule forbidding a backward glance. This was not only a reversal of fate, but a hymn to love and forgiveness. This moving story is the central theme of the classic opera Orfeo ed Euridice. This work transcends time and cultural boundaries, using music to tell a myth of love, loss, and redemption. Behind this story's life and soul is the German-Austrian composer Christoph Willibald von Gluck. Christoph Willibald Gluck was born on July 4, 1714, in Euridice, Bavaria, Germany. Although he came from a modest background and his family was not wealthy, this boy from a craftsman's household heard the call of music whispered by fate. His father was originally a forester and artisan, so young Gluck was expected to inherit this practical trade and live a simple, stable life. But the melody of destiny had already begun to play quietly. From an early age, Gluck showed an extraordinary sensitivity to music and remarkable skill with his hands. He was fascinated not only by any object that could produce sound, but also actively imitated melodies from street performers and church music. At the age of 13, he went to Prague to attend a church school, marking a crucial turning point in his musical development. There he served as an organist, immersed for years in the solemn and sacred atmosphere of religious music. It was amid those uplifting hymns, majestic chorales, and delicate notes that Gluck deeply realized music was not merely a display of technique, but a language of the soul, an expressive force capable of conveying emotions, ideas, and even transcending words. At just 18 years old, after laying a solid foundation through church music and practical experience, Christoph Willibald Gluck decided to elevate his musical journey to a higher level. He went to the academic center of Bohemia at the time, Charles University in Prague, to focus on studying music and philosophy. There he not only delved into theory, but also honed his performance skills through practice, especially demonstrating exceptional talent with the cello and violin. His philosophical training deepened his understanding of the essence of art, blending reason and emotion in a way that would become a fundamental aspect of his later musical style. After graduating from university, Gluck did not immediately plunge into the glamorous music halls. Instead, he steadily accumulated hands-on experience step by step. He moved to Vienna and took positions in noble households, composing and performing music for them. In an era that prized court culture, aristocrats were both demanding and appreciative of musicians. It was precisely in this environment that Gluck's talent was sharpened and inspired. He worked closely with the prominent Lobkowitz family, frequently performing his own compositions at private concerts. This not only exposed him to the tastes and demands of the upper class, but also provided valuable connections and resources. Against this backdrop, Gluck's music began to attract wider attention. His melodies were smooth yet emotionally rich, his structures rigorous without stiffness, and combined with his keen sense of dramatic expression, he gradually stood out among his peers. The year 1747 marked another significant turning point in Gluck's musical career. Driven by a deeper passion for music, he went to Milan to study composition under the renowned Italian composer Giovanni Battista Sammartini. Sammartini was celebrated as a pioneer of Italian instrumental music, known for his innovative melodic lines and harmonic arrangements. Under his guidance, Gluck not only mastered the techniques and structures of Italian opera, but also learned how to perfectly integrate music with drama, enhancing the tension of the plot and the emotional expression of the characters. When Gluck first emerged on the musical scene, it was during the flourishing period of Italian opera. In 1747, his first opera, Euridice, premiered in Milan to great success, rapidly establishing his reputation in the Italian opera world. This work showcased all the hallmarks of the standard Italian opera of the time: ornate melodies, richly decorated arias, and a spectacular stage for singers to display their virtuosity. Gluck had a talent for capturing the fluidity of melody, immersing the audience in the music from the very beginning. Whether depicting the sweetness of love, the sorrow of betrayal, or the joy of victory, he painted each emotion vividly and movingly through his music. Over the following decade or so, Gluck traveled between Europe's major musical centers, London, Venice, Prague, Vienna, and Paris, where his operas continued to be performed, including Clemenza di Tito, Ezio, Antigone, and others. He composed for nobility, courts, and theaters, developing a mature and solid musical style that was warmly received by audiences everywhere. His name became synonymous with Italian opera, making him one of the most sought-after opera composers of his era. However, just as his career reached its peak, Gluck began to feel a growing unease. With the expanding stages and accumulated experience, he increasingly recognized the problems behind Italian opera: overly ornate arias, complicated yet empty embellishments, and fractured plot structures. What should have been tense and emotionally rich drama was overshadowed by displays of technical skill. Performances were no longer about storytelling, but became competitions of vocal prowess. Audiences no longer cared about how the plot unfolded, but rather which star could sing the most elaborate high notes in falsetto. All of this left Gluck deeply disappointed. He began to reflect: what is the true purpose of music? Is it merely to entertain, or is it to communicate? Is it to please the ear, or to move the soul? With these questions in mind, Gluck gradually developed a resistance to the traditional opera system. He was no longer content with composing successful works. Instead, he yearned for works with soul. He argued that music should not overshadow the drama, and opera should not become a mere vocal competition. On the contrary, music should serve the drama. Melodies should align with the plot. Singing should be sincere and natural, and characters should be real people with emotions, twists, and struggles, not hollow, paper-thin figures. Gluck's ideas for musical reform were deeply rooted in the core principles of the 18th century Enlightenment: reason, simplicity, nature, and humanism. He lived in an era when great thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Diderot were active, and a cultural wave that championed reason and human liberation was sweeping across Europe. This intellectual revolution not only transformed politics and philosophy, but quietly permeated art and music as well. Gluck became one of the most representative musical reformers of this movement. He saw through the illusion of Italian opera at the time, glamorous on the surface, but hollow at its core. The dazzling high notes, the repetitive and pointless vocal ornamentations, and the singer's exaggerated prolonging of final notes to win applause were certainly awe-inspiring, yet they often pulled the audience away from the story and the emotions of the characters. He believed that opera should not be a showcase of technical prowess, but rather a harmonious blend of music and drama, an art form that moves the heart and communicates emotion. The year 1755 marked a significant turning point in the musical career of Christoph Willibald Gluck. That year, he encountered a profoundly influential theoretical work, Della Musica dei Greci, on the music of the Greeks, a collection of essays exploring the integration of music and drama in ancient Greek art. The ideas in the book deeply resonated with him, as if providing direction to the thoughts and doubts that had long occupied his mind, and igniting in him a powerful desire to reform the art of opera. The book emphasized the close integration of music, poetry, and performance in ancient Greek drama, arguing that art should be centered on content and emotion, with form serving that purpose rather than overshadowing it. This philosophy aligned perfectly with Gluck's own ideals. In its pages, he saw a vision of ideal art, simple, noble, and full of soul. Thus, Gluck's vision for reform became increasingly clear. He began actively contemplating how to free opera from the mire of excessive complexity, affectation, and showmanship, and to restore it to its original artistic essence, communicating emotion and expressing humanity. What he sought was an aesthetic that was simple but not simplistic, noble but not aloof. He firmly believed that what truly moves an audience lies not in a display of technical skill, but in whether the music resonates deeply with the drama's emotions, the character's psychology, and the rhythm of the language. In a letter, he stated explicitly, "My intention is to confine music to its true role, that of serving the poetry and enhancing the expression of the drama, rather than allowing it to dominate or distract for the sake of vocal display." This statement was both his artistic manifesto and a powerful rebuttal to the prevailing trends in opera at the time. Gluck's musical reform ultimately reached its peak in the opera Orfeo ed Euridice. This work was not only a milestone in his creative career, but also a revolutionary turning point in the history of 18th century opera. With its clear structure, profound emotional depth, and graceful unadorned musical language, it completely overturned the ornate yet hollow style of contemporary opera and laid the foundation for modern music drama. This work was created in 1762, during the peak of Gluck's close collaboration with the poet Leopold Calzabigi. Together, they broke away from opera's heavy reliance on virtuosic arias and fragmented storytelling, proposing a new model centered on dramatic coherence. This was not merely a shift in musical style, but a profound revolution in artistic philosophy. Orfeo ed Euridice draws its subject from Greek mythology, telling the story of the musician Orpheus, who ventures into the underworld in a desperate attempt to rescue his deceased wife, Euridice, only to lose her again due to a single, fatal moment of doubt. It is a timeless tale of love, loss, hope, and sorrow, perfectly aligned with Gluck's artistic ideal, the truthful and pure expression of emotion. In this opera, Gluck's idea of simplicity is not impoverishment, but refinement and clarity. He discarded flashy, ornamental passages in favor of melodies that are direct, moving, and dramatically expressive. Orpheus is no longer a heroic figure showing off vocal feats, but an ordinary man grieving the loss of his beloved, burdened by deep remorse and unending longing. Every line he sings, every note he utters, closely mirrors his emotional journey. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is artificial. The most famous aria, Che farò senza Euridice? What shall I do without Euridice? Stands as a quintessential example of this style. The melody is simple and repetitive, yet it carries a powerful emotional charge. The audience can feel Orpheus's helpless anguish, his irrepressible grief, and the heartbreak of loving someone deeply yet being powerless to bring them back. This kind of music needs no dazzling high notes or intricate rhythms. It speaks directly to the heart and evokes deep empathy. Moreover, the structure of Orfeo ed Euridice also reflects Gluck's innovative thinking. He integrated chorus and dance into the narrative, making every element on stage serve both storytelling and emotional expression. In the scenes set in the Underworld, the chorus is not merely decorative. It becomes the voice of fate and death. The dancers' movements are not just for visual beauty, but act as a silent transmission of emotion. The entire opera flows like an organic emotional arc, smooth, coherent, and free of jarring breaks or artificial display. In this work, Gluck also put into practice his principle of words first, music second. He subordinated melody to the rhythm of the text, ensuring that the lyrics remained clear and comprehensible. Every rise and fall of the musical line follows the natural cadence and emotional rhythm of the words, making the characters' inner lives more authentic. This fusion of speech and melody not only helps the audience better understand the story, but also deepens their immersion in the characters' psychological journeys. The success of Orfeo ed Euridice not only catapulted Gluck to fame, but also proved that opera need not rely on extravagance and technical display to move the audience. It could touch hearts and stir souls through emotional truth and artistic integrity. This work is widely regarded as the starting point of the opera reform movement, and it would go on to inspire future composers such as Mozart, Beethoven, and Wagner, offering them both creative direction and philosophical grounding. In addition to the widely known classic Orfeo ed Euridice, Christoph Willibald Gluck composed several other operas that embody the same spirit of reform and artistic value, including Don Juan, 1761, and Paride ed Elena, 1770. Each of these works stands as a clear manifestation of his musical ideals, and together, they solidify Gluck's distinguished place in the history of opera. In Don Juan, Gluck chose to tell the story of this legendary figure through the medium of ballet. This work contains virtually no traditional arias. Instead, it conveys emotion and narrative through the fusion of music and physical movement. This innovative approach broke away from opera's heavy dependence on language and voice, showcasing Gluck's early engagement with the concept of Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. In this vision, music, dance, drama, and visual elements are seamlessly integrated, all working together in service of the story and its emotional impact. In Paride ed Elena, Gluck continued to deepen his pursuit of emotional authenticity. Though the opera is set against the backdrop of Greek mythology, its focus is no longer on epic grandeur or heroic glory, but rather on the emotional struggles and choices between the characters. The duets between Paris and Helen are not composed to showcase vocal range or technical brilliance, but to express their inner conflicts, the tension between love and fate. Gluck handled the relationship between melody and language with great sensitivity, crafting musical lines that mirror the natural rhythm of speech. Every exchange between the characters flows like genuine conversation, drawing the audience into the intimate emotional worlds of the protagonists. It is as though the listeners are witnessing not a stylized performance, but the real and immediate inner lives of the characters. Whether it was the wordless dance of Don Juan or the tender yet restrained melodies of Paride ed Elena, Gluck consistently upheld a central principle. Music is a vessel for emotion, not a display of technical prowess. He did not seek raucous applause, nor did he cater to superficial trends. His only aim was to portray the truest expressions of human emotion within the lines of his scores. Every note he wrote seemed to whisper a heartfelt confession, conveying a deep and resonant emotional truth. In 1773, Gluck crossed the sea to Paris, a move that marked a new chapter in his career and cemented his place in European music history. With the support and patronage of Queen Marie Antoinette, he signed an exclusive contract with the Paris Opera and began composing operas for French audiences. At the time, Paris was the cultural capital of Europe, home to a fiercely competitive opera scene where numerous factions and styles coexisted. Armed with his distinctive vision and unwavering artistic convictions, Gluck arrived prepared to launch a sweeping musical revolution. In 1774, Gluck's new work Iphigenie and All-Eyed premiered with great ceremony at the Paris Opera. Based on a Greek myth, the opera continued his preference for classical subjects, while also embodying his ideals of emotional sincerity and dramatic cohesion. On opening night, the atmosphere in the theater was tense, and audience reactions were sharply divided. Supporters of reform hailed Gluck's work as a breakthrough that freed opera from the constraints of tradition. Meanwhile, conservatives harshly criticized it, arguing that he had diminished the singers' opportunities to display their vocal virtuosity and deprived the audience of the grandeur they expected. This opera war, a clash of musical and aesthetic values, quickly became a hot topic in Parisian social and artistic circles. Despite the controversy, Gluck's reformist ideals steadily gained more supporters. He emphasized that music must serve the expression of the drama and the emotions within it, rejecting excessive virtuosity and ornamental excess. He sought to return opera to its essence as a dramatic art form. This style, simple, sincere, and emotionally compelling, resonated with many music lovers and critics, marking a major turning point in the development of opera in Paris and across Europe. Gluck's influence extended beyond composition. He also drove fundamental changes in operatic performance. He opposed the practice of singers stretching syllables or dragging notes simply to show off their technique. Instead, he insisted that singing should reflect the character's emotional state and support the narrative. This brought opera performances closer to psychological realism and emotional truth. Stage design and performance styles were also reformed. Excessive ornamentation and exaggerated acting were stripped away in favor of naturalism and restraint. These changes collectively fostered a more vivid and moving theatrical experience. In 1779, Gluck concluded his illustrious musical career and chose to return to Vienna, where he enjoyed a relatively peaceful retirement. Although he no longer composed as prolifically as in his youth, the opera reforms he championed and the profound influence of his works continued to resonate widely within the music world. Vienna, the city of music, shone even brighter with the presence of this great composer. During Gluck's later years, the young Mozart held him in particularly high esteem. In the 1780s, Mozart often included Gluck's compositions in his concert programs as a tribute to the pioneer of operatic reform. This not only acknowledged Gluck's musical achievements, but also reflected the respect and learning of a rising generation of composers from their predecessors. Mozart drew inspiration from Gluck, further advancing opera and refining the integration of music and drama to even greater perfection. However, Gluck's final years were not entirely peaceful. In 1787, during a luncheon with friends, he suddenly suffered a fatal arrhythmia and passed away at the age of 73. This master, who had transformed the landscape of European opera, quietly left the world. But his musical spirit continues to burn like an evergreen flame, inspiring audiences and musicians around the globe. Fortunately, although Napoleon's army invaded Vienna shortly after Gluck's death and many precious cultural treasures were destroyed, Gluck's musical works were not lost. Through music publishing, performances, and the legacy passed down by his disciples and followers, Gluck's compositions and ideas have successfully endured to this day. Whenever we enter an opera house and listen to those concise yet emotionally rich melodies, we can still feel Gluck's relentless pursuit of the fusion between music and drama. Christoph Willibald Gluck was not only a reformer of opera, but also a figure whose music and ideas have had a profound and lasting impact on the history of Western music. From his gripping Orfeo ed Euridice to the tension-filled and dramatic Iphigenie and Allied, Gluck used his unique musical language to redefine the form and content of opera, thoroughly overturning the overly virtuosic and ornate styles of his time. With melodies that were simple yet noble, he closely integrated music and narrative, making music a powerful tool for expressing emotion. Opera, under his influence, ceased to be a mere showcase of technical skill and became a truly moving artistic experience. More importantly, Gluck's innovative spirit and reformist ideals opened new creative horizons for later musical masters, especially Mozart and Beethoven. Mozart found in Gluck's works a perfect example of the fusion between music and drama, while Beethoven drew inspiration from this profound emotional expression to develop his own unique symphonic and operatic styles. Gluck became a pioneer of neoclassical music, and the principles he championed, simplicity, sincerity, and emotion above all, deeply influenced the trajectory of subsequent musical development. To this day, Gluck's operas continue to be performed on stages of major theaters around the world, cherished and respected by audiences and music lovers alike. His music not only inherits the elegant melodies of Italian opera, but also incorporates the noble simplicity of neoclassicism, revealing an art form rich in layers and tension. It is precisely because of Gluck's dedication and efforts that opera was able to break free from past constraints, advancing toward deeper and richer emotional expression and ushering in a diverse and vibrant new era of music. Thank you for watching and sharing this story. If you are deeply moved by this legend of love, loss, and hope, please be sure to like and share it with your friends. Feel free to leave a comment below to tell us which Gluck work is your favorite or share your thoughts on this opera story. Your support is the greatest motivation for us to keep creating. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so we can explore more amazing stories together. See you next time.